Good evening to our radio audience and to our guests, distinguished panel. I learned about Matthew Shepard's death in an odd way, which I think will give great encouragement to the journalism students in the audience. I'm a product of college radio, the Hofstra radio station at Hempstead, Long Island. Hofstra, by the way, is an obscure university which is about to host the third presidential debate, making it considerably less obscure, so there's hope for everybody. I listened, I got to the news of Matt Shepard's death all at once. Unlike the rest of the nation, I did not hear of the brutal assault. I wasn't waiting over the weekend, hoping, praying against prayer that he would live. I learned it all on that Monday morning when I listened to the CalX newscast because I was about to do my radio program in Straight Jacket on the University of California station. And in 2 minutes, a college newscaster, who was a student newscaster, summed up every beat in the Matthew Shepard story as if she was preparing a script for Steven Spielberg. Everything was there. The death, the crucifixion images, the tears, the denials, the girlfriends, everything, every possible element of the story that would later come out and would make headlines and reverberate down the decades was present. And I stood and sat in my chair, about to go on the air, in shock. I had many years before been the producer of a program of a film called Bashing for Community United Against Violence. It was a pioneering film on anti-gay violence, a portion of which was taught in the school system in San Francisco, a portion of which was excerpted on Ted Koppel's Nightline for the purposes of congressional hearings. And I thought that we had made some progress. I thought we had actually accomplished something. Then all these years later, learning about Matt Shepard's death, I wondered, well, what had happened? What had allowed us to get to this particular point? A few years later, I was very privileged to meet a young woman from the University of Wyoming, Matt School, who was the faculty advisor to the lesbian and gay group at the University of Wyoming in Laramie, Beth LaFrida. She worked very hard and produced amazing moving work called Losing Matt Shepard, Life, Politics, and the Aftermath of Anti-Gay Murder. This is what I wrote in the Bay Area Reporter to introduce my interview with Beth LaFrida. Once upon a time, there lived a charming little boy man who went to college in a small town that lies along the vast highway that connects San Francisco to New York. Laramie is a town filled with cowboy bars, but no cowboys. Later, after the tragedy, people would wonder how this boy man, who spoke several languages and looked like he was barely 13, could have found himself drinking with guys who normally spent their days pounding nails. The boy man stumbled onto something that night in that bar with those carpenters. He stumbled onto the secret of how one becomes famous in America. The price of the secret, sadly, if not surprisingly, was death. From Beth LaFrida's book, Losing Matt Shepard, I wanted to quote one passage. She had the opportunity to go into the files of the local newspaper. The Casper Star Tribune had printed an essay by a 12th grade friend of Matt Shepard's. I remember once when I was in second grade, Matthew played the lead in one of our elementary school plays. About a week later, he accompanied his little brother, who was on my soccer team, to a soccer potluck. Standing near me, he was a giant, the first celebrity I had ever met. The writer recalled his second brush with Matt a year later at a Boy Scout meeting. Matt and his fellow scouts stood on the stage, recipients of an award. But the adults had neglected to tell them to return to their seats. As a guest speaker prattled on, the boys stood at attention. Moments later, young Matthew fainted. His knees were locked and he fell flat on his chin. After receiving 7 or 8 stitches, he was again my celebrity. Something about this small story echoes the writing Matt would inspire among strangers as well. The charisma of vulnerability, the pull of theater. That Matt, whose youthful and attractive visage appeared frequently in anti-hate ads on MTV in 1999, had become something of a celebrity was unsurprising, but still fascinating. He was invoked by presidential candidates and television actresses, eulogized by rock stars, compared to dead princesses. What possibly could link a brutal murder in a remote landscape to such things? Perhaps such a linking is merely characteristic of a national political style that proceeds all too often through the mechanism of iconhood and adoring identification, through the expression of emotion as itself a political good. Movements do need their martyrs, and emotions can be the glue that leads citizens to action. But what happens when emotion is the only action in town? Beth LaFrida from Losing Matt Shepard. I want to proceed now with our panel and have people express, first of all, what they felt when they heard about the news of Matt Shepard, the kind of where were you when JFK was shot kind of experience. And then try to give us a little perspective on what we've gained over the past 10 years when kind of a comet came out of nowhere and struck us all with a kind of awe and shame and fear about what happens when suddenly an issue takes the kind of prominence we might have wished it to take, but we didn't expect it would happen in quite this way. The events of 10 years ago are significant today, and today we will examine why. And this forum is about Matthew Shepard, about gay community newspapers, those who report and those who make news from the community of lesbian, gay men, bisexual, and transgender people. Cynthia Laird is editor of the Bay Area Reporter, working with then editor Mike Salinas. She very much recalls the days 10 years ago at the paper when some of these men phoned in. Cynthia?
Hello. Yeah, I was a staff writer in 1998, and Mike Salinas was the news editor. And back in those days, we had a UPI computer. It was kind of like the ticker tape. And Mike had keyed in gay and lesbian and other words so that we would get those stories from the wire service. And that came over, and I know that Mike was just shell-shocked, and I was just stunned. We just couldn't believe it. And then when we found out he died on Monday, we had a paper to get out on Thursday, and it was just, there was, rallies in the Castro that night. I have the old paper from the Castro rally, which is one of the largest rallies that's been there in recent years. We just don't get people up there that much anymore for anything. And it had come the same year that a San Francisco man had been brutally beaten and died outside of a gay bar. So we were dealing with all of that also. So it was just a real shock and sadness.
David Kligman was an Associated Press reporter weeks before and written a feature which made a big story out of the fact that the Bay Area Reporter, our newspaper, for the first time had no obituaries in an issue that were linked to the deadly disease of AIDS. And this became a national story that was picked up by CBS News and a number of other national outlets. Of course, just weeks later, the story of Matthew Shepard would become front page news. David Kligman.
Thank you. I guess with my role at the Associated Press was, when I heard the news, I came across our wires at the AP here in San Francisco, and it was kind of like getting punched in the gut kind of thing. And I say that because having been a reporter for 7 years prior with the Associated Press, you become used to a lot of tragic stories, and you see a lot and you hear about a lot, and you kind of almost become numb or inured to it. And so this story seemed different, and for me personally, interestingly enough, I had turned down a job earlier that year, probably not the best career move at the time, but I had turned down a job to be the correspondent for the whole state of Wyoming for the AP. So interesting that I ended up covering the story that I'm here, why I was invited here, but had I gone to Wyoming, I most likely would have covered the Matthew Shepard story as well. So that's it.